Welcome to the Practice Podcast, conversations probing the nature of practice. I'm your host, Dave Fearon, co-author with Peter Vaill of the digital book on Practice as a Way of Being. Find it at mylibrary.world. And now to our show. Well, folks, as I'm moving toward the 300th episode of the Practice Podcast, I saved this last spot for Tom Bohinc. Well, it's not the last I'll ever do, but the last of the 300s. How's that? It's reserved seating for you, Tom.
Thank you.
Tom and I have met more than once now because of his fantastic networking abilities and some very creative events that he creates through one of his creations, Prometheus. And we'll talk about that as we become more involved in our conversation. But I asked Tom how would he want to be introduced for this podcast. And he said, well, he was a former business executive who is researching and practicing the question of leadership. And why do I say it's a question? Because he didn't. Because, and I'll start off with this, Tom. I have been fascinated with this leadership, leader, you name it, all having to do with lead and how it comes out in life since I was a little kid. And academically through my undergraduate and graduate work and on and on and on as a teacher, always with, I'm not quite satisfied that I've found something that about leadership that kind of pulls it all together and makes me say, yeah, now I can die a happy man. And I'm afraid you have the same infection.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. Yeah.
So do you remember when it really started to, I know you're a business executive, but when the matter of leadership caught a hold of you and has been drawing you through all these years since?
Yeah, I think it's I don't know that there's a St. Paul moment that I can refer to. I think it's more of an evolution of recognizing that it's not only the qualities of people and how they contribute, how they engage, but how people and organizations, what those dynamics are that make something flow and succeed or inhibit it, right? So I know in my own challenges in the business world that I had some moments where I just said, I have to understand this better because I'm in this broken situation and I want to understand better what the factors are that might get it back on track, right? So, And so, that certainly started my conscious, intentional focus on that whole part of the world instead of, technology and achievement and things like that. It's the people dynamics that are involved. Mm-hmm. And I guess it came to focus on leadership somewhere along the line. I don't remember one specific event, although I, began to think about this as these qualities that I want to see in individuals and collectively are leadership qualities. And so what does this mean? And certainly the more I looked, the more sometimes confused I was. I tried to find good sources for this stuff, and I found that a lot of people don't have very good answers about this. And I came to the conclusion that the industry as a whole was, for whatever good intention, was really not meeting the moment.
I get it.
And, we could just shrug our shoulders and say, oh, well, it's just the industry's not meeting the moment. Or we can say, this is a moment that needs to be met. I don't know that I can meet the moment, but I certainly am intrigued by this idea. And I certainly am going to put my efforts into, at the time, I didn't say it this way, but we came to speak about it as make leading clear and make leaders common. because leading shouldn't be confounding and complicated and academic and atomized and fragmented. It should be clear, even though at the time I said that, I thought I might find a clear definition of leadership, kind of like you said. But I've come to believe that we can get a clear structure for who leaders are and what leaders do. But how that manifests is really very specific to the time and the place and the people that you're in.
Absolutely.
There are the details of that are uncountable, and they're really specific to the situation. But the factors and the structure that make it up, the elements, you can understand what those are. And so leading clear means having the capacity to understand what leading is, or at least to make the choices to lead in that moment. And to make leading common really is my ongoing battle to change the way we think of who a leader is and what leading is. It's leaders is common means the leadership capabilities and choices of every person in every situation. It's not positions. It's not a class of or people. It certainly isn't the superhuman exceptional person. It's the person who exceptionally can be present in their situation and make choices towards good intentions or intentions that matter to all of us universally.
Move things along. There's a dilemma in what you've said that is very similar to the dilemma that Peter Vaill and I addressed when we looked at something called practice, because there is practice behavior in almost every situation. One or more people are doing something that they do best at that time, and it's extraordinarily situational, whether they bring that practice out or they keep it stuffed in their chest. But beyond that, we have practitioner, and immediately, or practice, people think doctors, lawyers, Indian chiefs, the usual titled people like you've mentioned in the leadership thing. And in several of the conjectures of Peter's essay in our book, he started referring to practice with a capital P, even in the middle of a sentence. And I remember asking him, why the capital? He said, because I think of it as big P. Everyone sometime, maybe all the time, has an aspect of what they do called a practice level commitment. And it is a commitment. It's a conscious decision to achieve certain results that matter to them. And they keep doing it no matter what, whatever the circumstance. So, and indeed, he said there are two practices. There's leadership and learning. That's germane to all of those. So here we were. And, when you're telling the world, we can't tell you what this Spider-Man level superpower person is all about one more time, with 7 traits and 15 ways of identifying the competencies, you're going to get kind of let down, because we're going to tell you it's you and the person next to you in the workplace. And you, oh, come on. So what sorts of responses are you getting with the idea of not only clear, which I think is terrific, but common, that leaderliness is in everyone?
Yeah. Well, I think it's the Prometheus message or story is a complicated one, and it goes against the grain, because not with a negative energy or a toxic way, but it's a pretty radical view, and so not everyone is comfortable with what we say. People are comfortable with convention, even if they're unhappy with convention. And so if you give them and people want that definitive answer. They want a recipe. In fact, we're wired this way, I've come to understand, because this whole thinking fast and slow idea is that, when we run into something we don't know what it is, or we run into something, we think we know what it is, we don't leave that question open. We answer that question. And we are happy with a bad answer rather than no answer. Yeah. And we're also happy with an incomplete answer rather than a holistic answer, especially because to have a holistic answer, you have to be comfortable with, fashionable word now, complexity, because the world is not one thing. And certainly the people in it and people in relationship and society and organizations and economies are not simple things. And leadership is a pervasive, complex topic. And so you have to be willing to accept the fact that it's not easy to get your head around, and that you get comfortable with bits and pieces of it, and you're constantly reframing it. That's not something people really want to hear. They want to hear, here's the 10 things that I can tell you about in my TED Talk, come to my weekend retreat or sign up for my webinar and you'll be a better leader. And there's some skills that you can learn that way, and some concepts that you can use as constructs to lead with. But I think they only are the parts and not the whole.
I'm guessing that because I've led in many of those kind of gatherings over the years, and both as a teacher and a consultant teacher. And yeah, we have to have a model. We have to have at least 2 PowerPoint slides, and just so that people will say, okay, he's not going to take us out into the wilderness, which is exactly where I want to take my students and my clients. The wilderness. What makes it a wilderness? We haven't been there yet. It's the future. And there's no such thing as certainty. So we get them. So I sort of inch them forward into the idea of, okay, we're at the edge of this idea about leading, and beyond that is what you have to do to lead. And what I'm getting at, though, is that just pulling people toward the wilderness, just unlocking their time in their comfort zone and letting them out for a little bit of time, whether it's a day or weekend retreat, however, I'm thinking it starts something going on inside of them, which you have found through Prometheus and your research is there in all of us. It's about how do you wake it up? How do you get them thinking, maybe I am. That's what I was working on all those years. I am, not just they, it, the figure on the screen, but hey, I am a leader sometimes.
Yeah, and I don't mean to I don't know if I sounded like I was suggesting you don't have weekend retreats and webinars.
No. I'm just saying it's a good thing we do.
They're all steps. They're all steps to building kind of the accumulation of insight. But be like, you're a professor. I don't know what you taught, but if you try to teach economics in a weekend, you're not going to succeed at teaching economics in a weekend. And then when you really start to know economics, you realize it's an imperfect science. It's there's some things that are clear and repeatable and predictable, and some things that you didn't like what I said. My argument may be against how they are presented or sold.
Yes.
Is I think that whoever's offering the experience or the information should be humble enough to say, here's part of the big story, and this is how it fits into the big story. So you'll learn this. This will be useful. You'll be drawn into the larger story of whatever the topic is. But it's not all you need. It's just something you need.
Yeah. Oh boy, wouldn't those book publishers want to have the book? This is all you need to know. Well, we get into they've written it many times.
One of the issues that keeps leadership locked in its kind of current unhappy state is this. There's so much in our commercial culture to tout our answer to instead of making a more cohesive understanding. There's so much pressure to make your stuff sound unique. Right.
Absolutely.
And so pretty soon, the person who's trying to understand it has got, 10 things to that are these the same or are they different? And then there's 100 things and there's 1,000 things. They're like, what are we talking about here, right? Which is, so we're creating confusion in all in the service of the commercial world, which is just a hard thing to undo. But it's I think part of the problem.
The academic world is in the same orbit. In order to have an article published, which sends it through many, many cycles, it sometimes gets winnowed down through the review process. Well, just say what it is, all this preparation, and just give us a conclusion, because that's all people are going to read. And I'm being a little hard on that process. But over the years, I've seen people who want to be promoted and tenured in academic life, particularly in business schools, are not really rewarded for essays or thoughtful questions that they want to put out there for dialogue, through the kind of dialogues they've had in the earlier phases of the journals. I would put something out there and then someone would write a response to it and it would be part of the published thing. And it was really fascinating. And I saw that kind of going away as I was moving toward my retirement in 2016, and heard the agony, really, and felt the agony of some of the younger faculty who were saying, data, all they want is data now. And they were like, in a journal about teaching and learning, they want data. Yet most of teaching is like you're exploring in all other aspects of leading. It's very personal, very much about the human. And so anyway, where are we headed, Tom? You're the visionary in this conversation. Yes, you guys have moved it a long way. You guys being the circle of people you've brought together in Prometheus. What are you driving at now?
Yeah, well, I think you're asking two questions, maybe, or which one do you
three.
Want? One is where's the industry going, or where's the top leadership going in this world, and what's next for Prometheus? I think I'm not sure which question.
I'm more interested in Prometheus.
Well, what's next for Prometheus?
we know where the industry is going. They go in a continuous loop.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I guess we're in this liminal space of. I really feel that. We've had 3 kind of things we wanted to do this year. And one of them was to take the framework that we have that we think helps people navigate the idea of who leaders are and what leaders do, and find ways to communicate it more simply in ways that are, acceptable in publications and social media and things like that. Mm-hmm. And that's a lot of work. And what I hope to do is to use some AI tools to try to mine and glean some of the libraries that we have through the voices recordings and stuff, and try to use those to create some content. We could create a book, or if I created a book, it would be 100 pages, just like your publisher wants, because, I think the most important things are really simple. They're fundamental and they're deep, but if you accept them as sufficient of an answer, it really would be a shift for most people. They look for a more complicated answer. They want the recipe, right? So whittling it down and expressing it as one. The second thing we've worked on is these warmer voices sessions, which you've joined and are part of the people who appreciate that there's something special about those experiences. And this is the idea. The best I can say it is that you've got to step back from complicated conversations sometime and just meet the people you're talking to, and let the relationship that you have and open your mind and your heart to things that otherwise you're running past. That's my expression. And I think, so we're doing it to create the experience, but we're also trying to be able to reflect on it and share it or identify it as a practice, for example, so that people can do more of this in the world, in their lives. And historically, I won't overstate the claim, but my instincts are that there's two things that make this especially the right time for this. And one is the whole AI technology political mess that we're in, where human factors and human connections are going to be more important, and we need people need to know how to do that and feel safe doing that, and they don't know. They're isolated and lonely and disconnected. The second is the remote work problem, right? And the return to work thing and all that stuff, where one camp thinks that if you come back to work, you magically will work together better. And you can only get some of the people back to one location, and it doesn't mean they'll work together better when they're in that location. And I really think that there's a missing skill and awareness about the intention of human connections and relationships that this warmer voice of stuff can be the seed of.
I agree.
And then the third thing is, we touched on it briefly. This is the idea that the leadership industry is kind of stuck. The tautology of they keep inventing the same themselves is the same problem over and over again in different ways. Mm-hmm. And the world is being underserved by this. And I think it needs a more direct challenge. The emperor's clothes maybe need to be articulated a little bit more. And haven't found the right group of people. The people that are most motivated by the leadership topic in the leadership industry are embedded in the leadership industry, and they don't really, they don't really want to say it's toxic or part of the problem, and it needs to change. And I can be full of respect and recognize people's good intentions and see how what's there fits how the world works, but it isn't working. And so I'd like to find some ways to get a group of people to say, these are the tweaks that we could make to the system that people can insist on making to the system.
Rather than completely replacing it. In other words,
there is a big, you get some voices who say, leadership is terrible. We don't want leadership, blah, 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 blah. Well, I think historically, people have a habit of just coming up with the next thing that they say is better than the last thing. And then the next thing just kind of subsumes the flaws of the previous thing. It just got new words. It hasn't really solved the problem in a more fundamental way. And so as difficult it is, I'd rather that people have a new relationship to leadership than to replace the idea of leadership altogether. It's a very human and I think when thought of from a preacher's perspective, healthy thing. Again, it's not about deferring to one person. It's not about abdicating responsibility. It's not about my taking responsibility for everything. In some circumstances, I might be the guy or the gal who makes something happen. That's kind of the traditional hero leadership thing. But a lot of times I am just part of making that reality and setting those conditions that allow people to thrive or succeed. Mm-hmm. And I'd like people to be more aware about that and have more intentionality about it.
You've mentioned we when you're talking about Prometheus. Who are we? Who's
well, we are definitely a loose community, unstructured community of people who, I wish there was more cohesion and a little more kind of circling the wagons around it. But a lot of the contributors have their own thing that are similar. For example, they have podcasts or master classes or whatever it is. And would the whole Prometheus thing get more momentum if there was more cohesiveness around it? Probably, but I'm ambivalent about. I'm just as happy if Prometheus helps some other group come up with their own voice of the same story, because what's important is that the story and the thinking change in the world, not that the Prometheus idea gets into the world.
I think you're avoiding what has shut down many other wonderfully possible initiatives in the leadership and organization history of us, which is as soon as you do open it up to those who want to put their coffee rings on your table. Now you can't get them off, and this realization that you're helping us, certainly I, to see is so it's intimate. It's intimate, and as a concept, as Prometheus is intimate, as well as the concepts that you're developing and putting out gradually into the world in various forms. So, you're going to open up parts of us as we have in more voices, which are unpleasant, but there they are. And what we realize as we're telling our little stories is, oh my goodness, I'm hearing myself tell this story. Am I telling my truth or am I making this up? So you're getting right into the marrow of human behavior as well as interhuman behavior. If you have the model that's occurred in my mind, as this sounds familiar, I think of, this is weird because I'm weird, the lava lamp?
Yeah.
Yeah, just picture it.
We're both old enough to know that. Sort of.
Yeah, man. No, I'm not talking about that part of my life. But the lava lamp image comes to mind because it's in a medium, and it's a warm medium, which makes the glob, when you turn it on, start to break up into basically all kinds of satellites. Sometimes the main one that cohesion we talked about stays larger than some of the satellites, but the others go kind of moving off in the same medium, which is awareness, consciousness, whatever we want to say the overall medium is. But as those, if they could break through the wall of that lava lamp or enter into a clear lava lamp as one blob that then can start to break out, it to me is the kind of change model that I sense that Prometheus is working.
It's definitely an emergence model. Let's put it that way. And it's not trying to control the emergence. It's just saying let's afford it. Let's facilitate it. Because what good is holding it back? What good is it being blocked, right? And it's certainly some personal consciousness and social consciousness, but the big consciousness is that we are so connected. We are so connected to our past, to our ideas, to our future, and I certainly was missing that appreciation for most of my life. I think. I mean, it's you could say it. People say yes, but don't experience it, right? And I think it's hard to pin down, but it's also hard to underestimate the impact that has.
Yes. Wow. Well, in the last couple of minutes here, Tom Bohinc, what is going to keep you happy for an indefinite number of years ahead?
Wow. What's going to make me happy?
Keep you happy, because I think you are happy.
Yeah, that's true. I was happier.
Yes.
Boy, it certainly is. I would love to. I'd love to see more, cohesiveness and acknowledgement around the fact that these are some good ideas, and have people adopt them and acknowledge that they're adopting them. That would be awesome. Mm-hmm. I just think I think that relationship building for me is the important part of, and the ideas that brings. It's not like I'm giving up ideas for relationships or for accomplishing things. I used to think of those as separate choices. Now I see them as integral choices. And I think that the relationship piece brings the most interesting information, and it also brings you the most gratification. So that's personally how I plan to spend my days, is to just figuring out who we are and how we live and what's going on, and trying to help people open up.
It's a very close time right now globally, but particularly here in the States, which you moved away from recently to France, but you remember how it was. And if you'd stayed in Chicago, I think you'd be horrified with what's going on with the militarization.
Well, my family, I still have family there, so I still look at the news every day, and it's just crazy.
Yeah, it is.
No, I think the world has, for our generation, for those listening, could maybe tell we're older. We've been lulled into, we've been misled by the good times that we've had, and that it's not that history is suddenly becoming difficult. History's always been difficult. We've had this period of abundance, and this cycle of badness is happening again. And whether or not our humanity can stand up against the stronger forces of oligarchy and technology, oligarchs, technogarchs, whatever the word is, I don't know.
I like that.
Yeah. I don't know what'll happen. I hope, because if those things are flawed, that people will realize that, and we'll find some kind of new era of goodness.
Amen, Tom. And that would certainly keep me happier too. And I think that's why I'm happy to be in connection with you, and hopefully will be for a long while, because as you continue to be so profoundly involved in coming up with the next, not next big thing, but what's going to help us next. I'm proud and honored to know you.
Thank you. I appreciate your being here, and I'll tell you, a lot of my time is going out on a limb and going out on faith. This seems to be what makes the most sense. I'm going to try to share this, and I think, as we said earlier, it doesn't fall on welcome ears all the time for bunches of reasons, and so it's great that some people start to see that this is not a bad way to think about this.
Well, thank you again, and I'll see you at the next Warmer Voices, and hope many others who hear this podcast will say, Warmer Voices. I'll put some links into the description.
Okay, and regular voices. I'm anxious to hear what our guests on Wednesday have to say about innovation and how they think of setting conditions, which is a very prominent theme in the Prometheus framework, setting conditions for innovation, and how much of that Warmer Voices stuff is in there. Because I find that people who are sincere and attentive and diligent and conscientious keep finding the same things, but we're not telling each other that they're the same things. We make them sound different, and we ought to be telling people, hey, here it is.
Same is better. Sometimes. Yes. Same is better.
Well, same when it's not embedded in the bad stuff, but same when it's like, oh yeah, right there, we could be doing this instead.
The same way, yes.
Yeah.
All right, so we can go on. I can run this for 2 hours. I'd love to, because I'm learning like crazy. But
yeah, well, we could do one on each of the 9 lenses of the framework.
All right, I'll be back.
Okay.
I'll be back
Take
for
care.
more.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Practice Podcast, conversations probing the nature of practice. If you'd like to hear more, go to Podomatic, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube. And please consider purchasing our book on practice as a way of being at mylibrary.world. It's a digital book with lots of features that you do not see in a conventional book. So once again, thank you, and I look forward to you listening again.